Hello and good evening and welcome to Scottish Self-Build and Renovation, this special Q&A session. My name is Gavin Eswant. I'm one of the directors here at the company. Really appreciate you guys joining us. As I said, this is a special programme kindly sponsored by Scotframe. This is your opportunity to ask some questions. If you're thinking about doing a self-build project or a renovation, or you're just maybe down the road and you've got a few burning questions, this is your opportunity really to get involved and speak to the experts. So before we get started tonight, I just wanted to double check that you can hear us okay and see us okay. We've had a few updates to our streaming channels, so we just want to make sure that everything's working. So if you just want to kind of pop us a wee kind of comment in the comments field, that would be really appreciated. If you have a question, again, just put it into the comments field as well. We will see it, we'll pick it up, and we will pitch it to the right person on the channel. So, right, so we are going to get cracking here. By the way, it is recorded, and if you do want to kind of catch up on any of the parts of this program, just have a look at it. We'll post the link once we are finished tonight. It'll also get converted into a podcast. So if you're in the car or if you're listening, walking the dog, then that's another place that you can download and listen to these programs. We've also got, I think, 9 before this, and they cover all sorts of things from just getting to grips with the self-build process. We've got water treatment, we've got all sorts of things. So if you have a look at our channels, you'll be able to get a bit more kind of informed about self-build and renovations projects. So bear with me, I'm just looking at my notes, and I'm going to introduce our panel of speakers one by one, and then once we get everybody introduced, we'll get them all onto screen, and then I'll maximize each expert, and you can ask the questions to them. If we do have any questions that cross over various individuals, we'll get them all on screen. So I might be a little bit kind of punchy in terms of how we're doing this. I'm on my own, so I'm just going to kind of give it a shot. So the first person I'm going to introduce tonight is Malcolm Thompson. Malcolm is the commercial director for Scotframe. So I'm going to pump him onto the screen here. Hello, Malcolm. How are you doing?
Hi, Gavin. How are you?
Good, not too bad, thanks. Thanks for joining us on a rainy Sunday evening. You're based out in Inverurie.
Yeah, well, we've actually got 2 factories, one in Inverurie and one in Cumbernauld, and then we have some sales offices dotted around the country. So we actually now service the whole of the UK, not just the Scottish market.
And is it domestic and commercial, or is it domestic only?
It's a bit of both. We service both the what we class as more the volume builder, but the 50% of our business is still self-build. So less plots. They tend to be bigger houses, bespoke, one-offs, very high specification compared to, maybe your volume builder. So yeah, right across. And we do the odd hotel, care home, student accommodation as well.
And have you found that during lockdown, there's been lots of people thinking about self-builds, maybe bringing the progress further, the thought process, and getting in touch with you guys, or have you found it's been completely slowed down?
No, very, very busy. I think people found they had more time on their hands to get through queries they may have had from, even planners or building warrant people. People then, being able to focus their time on moving their ideas forward in their dream home, and having the time to do the research and really get to grips with it. So we've actually seen the self-build continue all the way through lockdown and out the other end.
It's quite an exciting journey, I guess. It's I know if I had lots of time on my hands, I guess some people have been looking for a new project to get involved in. It's certainly up there with the best in terms of maybe spending that bit more time up front to get things right. Do you get involved yourself, or is there a team that kind of gets involved in the concept stage?
We have some in-house architects, as well as we also link with some local architects, but we do some of it ourselves. We have our own standard house range, which we will modify or adapt. They don't have to be just bought from as off the shelf as they are. They can be modified to suit everybody's individual tastes, or we'll design one from scratch as well. But we work with a lot of local architects as well. who know our product and are happy to support it.
It's great to hear that everyone's. It's good to hear that things are busy and not being impacted too badly by the supply chain impacts that probably happened maybe a few months ago.
Yeah, I think very early lockdown, it seemed to be steady, and then it got worse. I think people are now adapting to it, and everybody's got a supply chain. It's not just our supply chain, but the supply chain have a supply chain, and everybody's beginning to get to grips with it. And we're seeing a more steady supply of materials, maybe taking longer than it would have done pre-lockdown, but we're starting to see it come back in a bit more order.
Good, excellent. Okay, Malcolm, I'm going to take you off screen, and I'm going to introduce everybody to the next expert, who we have Duncan Robson. So Duncan, you're the lucky one that's up next. I'm just going to kind of pump you on the screen. I'm going to stop using that word. That's a strange word to use. But Duncan,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm well this evening. It's pretty dire weather outside. I'm great, yeah. It's good to be here.
You been up to much this weekend?
Getting ready for Christmas. All that great stuff. We watched a Christmas movie last night, so that was a nice start. Some popcorn.
Official start. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And how does DWR architecture work during Christmas and New Year? Do you take a break for the 2 weeks, or do you tend to always be looking at your emails?
I try not to look at my emails. Each year, I swear I'm going to stop working before Christmas and not start till the new year. But I always end up, something comes up. But I like to use that time actually just to catch up on the flotsam and jetsam and get that cleared for the year ahead, really. So a lot of the jobs that I can't get to because we're so busy, I'll go and do that sort of prep.
And that's what Malcolm was saying just now. It seems to be quite busy just now. Are you finding the same thing from your side?
I am, but there's always that nervousness being any kind of business. You think, okay, where's the next job going to come from? So it's always a balance. You're always busy. You're either trying to get work or you're trying to do work. So, but right now we're busy on all angles.
And what's keeping you busy, Duncan? Are you again? Are you domestic, commercial, a mix of both? Is it new builds? Is it renovations that are going on at the moment?
A little bit of everything. We've got quite a few self-built houses that we're working on. We're also dealing with some historic properties where we're looking to alter and add on to them. When you deal with listed buildings, of course, you've got to set about things a slightly different way. But I enjoy it. I really do. I love doing it. I like the older buildings too. I love sketching them.
And have you got a team that supports you, or are you just on your own there, or?
A combination of outsourced and in-house. The in-house, of course, is a slightly different ball of wax these days. So in-house means that I've got 2 staff that are working remotely, and we're up to speed now on using Microsoft Teams plus our other remote servers to then talk to each other. And it's not the same as being in the office, but it is safe.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the game just now. It's being able to work productively, but also be COVID compliant. It's a difficult balance, and you just never know when we're going to be going into lockdown again. It can't help you in terms of your projects and your planning, because that's obviously one of the major aspects of the role that you do.
I think when you adapt, though, it's in some ways it's improved, because I find that meeting with clients who are always a wee bit nervous about going on to some of these things, I think more people are now getting familiar with Zoom, but I quite like it because I've been able to get a good handle on sharing my screen and marking up things on PDF drawings. So I'm able to have a good conversation, make markups, and they can look at it. We've started using BIM software, which is Building Intelligent Models, and it's actually fully 3-dimensional. So I'm able to rotate buildings and walk people through our designs in a way that wasn't actually quite as easy before. So moving with the times, it's got some upsides.
Definitely. Technology, that's hopefully one thing that we'll be able to cover later on tonight. So great stuff, Duncan. Thanks so much for that. I'm going to take you back off screen, and I'm going to introduce everybody to the next person. And we have Hamish Malcolm, who was with me a few months ago. I'm just trying to remember when it was. Was it July, I think?
End of June, Gav. End of June.
Where's the year gone? It's ridiculous. What's that? quite a few months ago. And,
Yeah.
and Hamish, how are things with you guys? You're up in Inverness.
Yeah. It's been a busy year in the Highlands. Got a lot of just activity with people already based here. Certainly, we've seen a growth in demand and people looking to relocate to the Highlands. I think there is a concept known as the race for more space. So
hold on a second. Why did you go to the Highlands? You guys have got the wind, the rain. Oh, wait a minute. So we in Aberdeen here, but yeah, no, that's interesting. Actually, is that an influx from internationally or in the UK?
We've had one couple who came from overseas, or expats coming home again, I suppose. A few people from Central Belt, some from Englandshire. I suppose as we're talking about there, about people don't have to be in the office working now. They can work on Zoom, Teams, maybe within a couple of hours to the airport. Quality of life.
Yeah,
got a big garden. There's a few buzz points there that have brought people towards the Highlands. So yeah, that's kept us busy this year in the estate agency and the financial services side as well.
What's been happening in the mortgage world? Has there been any kind of impact by COVID, or has it been business as usual, or any trends emerging?
No, not business as usual. I think, in the words of the philosopher Ronan Keating, it's been a roller coaster of a year of mortgages this year. I think it's getting better week by week. Different lenders coming back to higher loan to values. Steadily, criteria getting easier. I think more so for salaried people. I think for self-employed applicants, depending on how your accounts have been hit by this year, it could be a longer time to recovery to really get back to what they would regard as their kind of lending capacity or borrowing capacity, I suppose. But you've got to play the cards as they're dealt. And if it's a lender we looked at second week in March, they're not there anymore. Well, we just have to. That's not going to change. You have to look for the best way forward for clients. That's been the aim this year, certainly.
Yeah, it's quite a scary time, but exciting time as well. I mean, hopefully we're kind of seeing the end of what's it? They're saying the start of the end. So fingers crossed that the vaccine has an impact and we can start to plan essentially. So, all right, thanks. Appreciate that, Hamish. I'm just going to kind of take you off screen just now and introduce the next person. And we are lucky to have Neil Walker from the Community Housing Trust. Hello, Neil.
Evening, Gavin. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Yes.
You're up in Inverness as well?
We're based up in Inverness as well, that's right, yes, Communities Housing Trust, although we do operate throughout the whole of Scotland and the various communities. My role here is the Self-Built Loan Fund Officer. So that's the Self-Built Loan Fund is a Scottish Government initiative. It's a fund that effectively acts as lender of last resort. So where self-builders have been unable to secure, self-build mortgages in the mainstream market, this fund of last resort can step in as a bridging fund. Ultimately, it will be available during the build process and is repaid at the end. Most folk will tend to look to remortgage to the market, or they may have an existing property that they're downsizing from and sell that to repay it. So, yeah.
Have you found that quite a few people have been kind of reaching out to you of late? I mean, this is a limited time loan, I believe, is it? It's going to have a sell by date. Is it next year or something like that?
It is. The current loan comes to an end for applications on the 31st of August 2021, and then there's a further year beyond that for the loans to be repaid. But again, like Malcolm from Scotframe was saying earlier, I think certainly early on in lockdown, more folk had a lot more time on their hands, and we saw a lot more activity, and that was very encouraging. And it allowed loans to be pushed through a wee bit quicker with people with more time. Okay, they were maybe slightly constrained by, their partners and professionals, having to work remotely as well. But we saw a really good positive buzz about the place, so that was good to see.
Do you think it's one of these loans that will be extended, or do you think it's going to be a hard stop next year?
We would like to see it extended. I think the demand that we've seen for this loan and the number of individuals and families that we're helping, I think the evidence is there, and we'll be obviously making a strong case to have this extended. Obviously we ran the pilot scheme for 3 years initially, and then we're awarded the current loan fund, which is nationwide, so it does cover the whole country. And we are seeing applications and loans going out throughout the whole of Scotland, from the Northern Isles down to the border areas. So it's an important part of the self-build market just now. And it's something that myself and Hamish have often talked about, and we've got some mutual contacts there as well. So,
sounds like terrible two you guys get together. It's going to be finance. I think it would be an interesting kind of prospect for people that are actually on that journey to find finance. There may be an opportunity for a midpoint between you and the traditional forms of finance as well. You just that'd be interesting to find out a bit more about later on in the programme. So thanks very much again, Neil. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Gavin.
Next, we've got Bodum. Bodum is joining us from Home Energy Scotland. I am just trying to find him here. There we go, found him. Hi, Bodum. How you doing?
Hi, Gavin. Good evening. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for joining us tonight. Where are you based? Is it Blairgowrie?
So I'm based in Perth and Kinross in Blairgowrie, just at the foot of the Cairngorms. So yeah, quite a broad area of Perth and Kinross that I have to deal with. But yeah, lovely scenery, lots of houses, interesting. Keeps me on my toes.
And have you been curtailed? Have you been kind of handcuffed to your office, or have you managed to get out and about?
Well, I actually work from home anyway, so it's not too much of a change with regards to my job. But the only change at the moment is because of the COVID and the different levels that we have at the moment, from going from a level 3 at the moment. Unfortunately, it's only telephone advice and sort of remote advice that we can offer at the moment. With until we get to a level 2 in Perth and Kinross, we won't be able to go out and do home visits, which is it's nice to get out and about to visit people's houses. You see so many different things, and it's certainly enjoyable.
Fingers crossed it's not so long to wait now until we can get back out into the real world and seeing, because I guess a lot of the work that you do, you have to touch and feel the actual property to understand exactly where Home Energy Scotland can benefit.
Well, this is it. I mean, there's always a benefit when you're viewing the property. I mean, we do have other online things that we didn't have years ago, such as Google Maps and Street View, that you can look at things. If somebody's just bought their house as well, there's often quite a lot of information from the estate agents. If you can look up the property name and address, you can find out a lot of information that way. The other way as well is by looking at energy performance certificates online as well. So you can get quite a lot of background knowledge from online, which is very helpful. Just now, without that tool, we'd kind of be stuck, So yeah.
And I saw one of the questions come in earlier on about I think there's a loan or some sort of finance package is that an interest-free loan that you can offer for heat technology. So hopefully we'll hear about that later on. That'd be good to hear. Excellent, thanks, Bodum. Again, I'm just going to take you off the screen and I'm going to introduce everybody to the next person, and that is Thomas Lawrenson of TL Tech, and I believe his lovely wife is alongside him. You're on mute, Thomas. I don't want to say that, but you're on mute.
Sorry.
How you doing, Thomas? That's all right, not a problem. How you doing, guys?
Not bad.
Awesome,
Good.
thank you. Yes.
Good. Thanks very much for joining us. You were playing judo, or the kids were playing judo?
No, the kids.
Okay, well, I was thinking that could be kind of a good family kind of outing, but is that local? Is that local to you guys? You're in Inverurie as well, I think?
Just
Or
outside
Rothinorman?
Inverurie, yeah, Rothinorman. So just at the sports centre in Inverurie. So it was our last session before Christmas.
Bro, just that's the second time that's been. We're not mentioning Christmas again tonight. That's the rules for tonight. I'm only kidding. Yeah, I'm a big Christmas fan, actually. To be honest, I was looking at your app. You posted a video a couple of days ago about the smart apps that you've got in the house there that you can switch on and off the Christmas lights. You can basically control everything. Have you got one for the microwave on that app? You can switch on and off the microwave, or is that to come?
No, we haven't really done the kitchen, have we? The living room is very, very smarted.
Kitchen's one room I've not touched yet.
It's quite incredible, though, in terms of technology. And you guys have got you've just finished off your crowdfunder for a project you're working on as well. And hopefully, if we get a bit of time at the end, we can have a dig in to see how you're doing with that as well. So. Well done, guys. You're pushing the boundaries of technology, which is fantastic. So ultimately, anyone that's thinking about home tech, you guys are online. Feel free to post any questions for any of the panel. Home tech is pretty much one of those things that it's not just about the nice things. I think one of the webinars that we did previously was all about the wiring, about getting hardwired versus wireless, and I learned so much in that 45 minutes. It's quite incredible. I didn't realize that there's all sorts of interference things going on, and just some considerations that if you just know a little bit of information at the very start of a project, it really does reap rewards and probably saves you quite a bit of cash throughout the whole project. So hopefully we'll hear more about that as well. And I didn't actually flash up your contact details, so I'm gonna. There we go. Happy days. So tltechsmark.com. And I will basically pass the baton on to the next person. Hopefully we'll get a chance to speak to you guys later on in the programme.
Thank you.
And we are now away to talk to Ben Trotter, who's the last person, by no means least. Let me just kind of fire him up on the screen here. Hi, Ben. How are we doing?
Not so bad, not so bad. Last, but reminds me of school sports day, which was my regular position. Coming in last.
Well, if I was at your school, I'm sure you wouldn't be last, that's for sure. So how are we doing tonight?
Oh, very well, thanks. Very well. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I think we were talking about the weather earlier on, weren't we? It's kind of just dinging down.
The windows have stopped rattling in the panes, so that's an improvement just in time for going live. So,
but to be honest, it's your bread and butter, isn't it? Water. I mean, let's face it. You know, if it's going to be dinging down.
When it's pumping it out the ground is our bread and butter. When it's pouring through my kitchen ceiling, that's not really quite my area of expertise. But yeah, it is actually rather ironic because in all seriousness, we've got it coming down in buckets out the sky right now. But the reality is we are having one of the biggest water shortages we've seen in history. I mean, it is such a weird contrast when you look out the window the last few days, and yet if you actually go on things like SEPA's website and look at their water scarcity report, it might be coming out the sky, at 90 miles an hour, but it's not staying in the ground at the moment. We haven't had for a couple of the last years consecutively, we've not had really the consistent level of rainfall. More importantly, we've not had the consistent snowfall, which then over the year, over springtime, certainly it melts, recharges all the surface based aquifers. So for people with things like wells, springs, and on a larger scale, even things like mains water reservoirs, there was a thing, I think we spoke about it the last time I was on. There was an article in the BBC News in sort of like autumn, summer 2018 showing that certainly in England, for example, they were having water shortages because reservoirs aren't refilling. And while private water is primarily what we do, it's something that even big companies, Scottish Water and stuff, will be facing that struggle of water scarcity as well. So anything we can do, helping people develop springs, wells. Obviously, we drill boreholes as well, so we can help people where their water supply has flat out failed them, or they're in an area, probably quite relevant to this. Thinking about what the other participants were saying, like the architects and Scotframe, about designing new builds. Quite often, you've got a lovely scenic location. If you have, as people have said, relocated to the Highlands, you could be in a place where there's no mains water. You've maybe got a tiny wee trickle of a burn nearby or a weak spring. It's not reliable. So we can come in, help establish a brand new water supply with a borehole and get people fully independent and with a consistent supply.
Yeah, and I think someone's asking a question about that actually, about the various kind of I'll find it on the list of comments in the feed, but there was someone asking a question about whether they should just go straight for the mains or whether there's an opportunity to look alternatively to that as well. So we could probably touch on that when we get down to his question. So excellent. Okay, well there you go. That is the introduction. I'm just gonna one by one put everyone back on the screen. Everyone needs to behave. There we go. All right, great stuff. So that is your panel of experts for tonight. Thanks very much again for joining us. Feel free to post any comments you have or any questions you have in the comments feed, and we'll tackle them one by one. But no better place to start than at the top here. So We have various questions. I'm going to try and distribute them evenly across the panel because there's nothing worse than sitting there and not getting talked to. I was going to hopefully have some people will kind of jump in with their kind of viewpoint as well, but I'm just going to start at the very top here. So this one is about plot finding. So suggestions for how to find plots rather than raking about on property sites. Who would be best placed to talk about that? I mean, I'm thinking Duncan, maybe Malcolm's got a viewpoint on that. I'm not sure. Maybe Hamish and Neil from up north as well. Has anyone got any thoughts on how you find plots? I mean, I've been there myself. I've kind of just driven around. I've literally driven around, thought, where would I like to live? And I think that's probably, from my perspective, is probably one of the first things I would start with is, where do you want to be? What do you want to? What's your life going to be? I mean, anyone any particular views on that?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. Just this week, we linked up a former client with somebody looking for a plot. As architects, one of the things we do is quite often is we get asked to get outline or planning approval in principle, so that a landowner or property owner can actually sell a site that's worth a bit more, or get the pre-approval, if you like, for it to be developed as a house. And we've done that for a number of clients. And just like I say, this last couple of weeks, somebody contacted us. They'd looked at the property websites, the SSBC or the property or the different ASBC, I should say, and they weren't finding anything immediately, all the popular real estates. So we were able to hook up with them with a former client, and also we're in Aboyne, so we work with a number of the local estates. So sometimes they sell some things, so we can be a good eyes and ears for that. Sometimes only to point a client towards, or a potential client towards, potential plots. The other thing we can do as well, of course, is we're well placed to assess a plot or a potential plot for people looking. You can sometimes see a plot, or I've talked to a neighbour who says, yeah, I can sell you this plot, and then have a chat with the architect, and you find there's a few things to check. So yeah, finding a plot, chatting to an architect's a good thing. Local knowledge. One of the things I've noticed is that people are looking from further afield to move up to this part of the world, so that when there's a lockdown, I think they can go for a walk and come across like fewer people, quality of lifestyle, and they don't have the knowledge. They don't know anybody. So a local architect does. Same as local solicitors. Sometimes they don't post everything on ASBC, and sometimes they have their recommendations on the website. But if you go and chat to them directly, they'll know of some other places. So that'd be my suggestions. Speak to local solicitors as well as local architects.
And I guess that would apply whether you're based in the area or not. You could just basically, I guess, pick up the phone or just do a bit of scouting. I mean, I guess it's one of those things. Is unless you know the demographic or know the area, why would you even want to? You should be probably visiting and understanding the whole kind of area first before you even get down that road as well. So
I think those are the people that are mostly trying to find a plot in an area they don't live in, so they just don't have access to that local knowledge, and that's particularly difficult right now through travel restrictions.
Are you finding any kind of any people phoning up asking you similar sort of questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
More now than I've ever seen. So yeah, and we help where we can.
Anyone else got any kind of thoughts about that? No? Cool.
I think social media, great thing for reaching out and connecting folk even though they're different part of the UK. It's been useful, and obviously estate agents' websites.
All right, good stuff. So yeah, basically, hopefully that helps. So suggestions for how to find plots. Talk to people local. Just have a look at Google Maps, etc. Just kind of, there's all sorts of online tools that you can use as well. But really, once you actually understand the area and where you want to live, it's really about reaching out to the locals. Excellent.
Local knowledge is the best.
Local knowledge. Yeah. All right. Second question we've got here. Found a plot of land with planning permission already in place. We will be able to finance the build ourselves, but can't afford the plot. Possible to get mortgage for the land only. That's maybe one for you, Hamish, is it?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. You knew it was a bad camera, wouldn't you? Lenders would still like to get a feel for the overall project, though. So there will still be steps whereby you've got to talk the lender through, obviously, the purchase of land. That's quite straightforward. But lenders don't want to go almost halfway with you. So even though you're able to roll your own money to get to the build stage, you also still need to go through getting your build cost onto a bit of paper, onto the lender's fact find, and flesh out the costs. So the answer is yes, but it's a little bit more complex than that, frustratingly, as well. But that can be done.
And is that something that maybe Neil, I don't know if you can lend any light on this, but is that something that the loan fund would entertain as well?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we come in as effectively lender of last resort. But if the mainstream market had declined for any reason, this is certainly something we can pick up on. We'd have to come at it a different way, because in terms of the Scottish Government criteria for this is that the land would have to be owned outright. So this may be something that Hamish was touching on there too. So the funds that this question has in place would need to buy the plot, and then the fund could be used to build the house. But as Hamish has already said, you're looking at an overall picture. So you've got the cost of your land and the build cost and all your professional fees is what I would term to be your development finance. And from that, you've got your own deposit to fund your portion of it, and then you're looking to borrow the balance. Absolutely possible to do it.
It sounds like the key here really is just to pick up the phone and chat through. I mean, there could be all sorts of other kind of scenarios that are behind this, and I think to ask the question, there could be all sorts of other influencers here that really just picking up the phone and having a chat as early as possible in the process.
That's the key phrase, Gavin, as early as possible.
As early as, I think that's going to come up quite a lot tonight. Actually, it seems to have done in the last kind of 9 sessions. It's get as much information and as much knowledge as early as possible. Sometimes you get too much information, become a Google expert, but ultimately, if you've got a nice network of people around about you, I think that's key to hopefully mitigate problems down the line.
Yeah.
All right, excellent, thank you. I have a question for, I think, Malcolm. Well, it says for Scotframe, actually, so probably clearly it is for Malcolm. So how quickly does cost go up for a custom design versus an off-the-shelf design? So I guess we're talking timber kits here. I assume that there's various kind of scenarios where you can purchase a design off the shelf, and then if you want to tweak it here and there, whatever a tweak means. But yeah, is that a question that can be answered, Malcolm?
Yeah, certainly, Gavin. I think so. The house ranges that we have are all available to be changed and modified, and the level of cost associated with that is dependent on how much change that we're going to make. If we want to extend it slightly or make it slightly wider or deeper or whatever, then those are not going to drive the costs up significantly. If we're going to completely change the structural element of the building by the changes, then that has a bit more of an impact. And it would be a very similar, if you were probably, Duncan can mention this as well. But, small changes might seem small, but have the big impact. So if we want to just remove a wall, which is the structural wall of the way the design of the house is, then that's maybe a small change in the eye of the customer, but it's significant to the design of the build. As you know, it's very windy in Scotland, so there's a structural element called racking that we need to deal with, which stabilizes the building in its form, and they are notoriously the walls that need to be removed when somebody wants to open out their living, dining, kitchen area, and then we need to maybe introduce some sort of structural elements to replace that racking. That's what would drive up the cost. Tweaking the size or the length of the building is not going to be huge, and depending on how minor, wouldn't have an impact at all. They would be taken up within an element of the fee structure, which I would say we set out from the very beginning as well.
Yeah. I think in my experience, it's not so much how quickly does cost go up. It's the cost will change as soon as you change any aspect of it. Theoretically, you could take a standard design and say, can I make it slightly simpler, which is unlikely, but it's possible it can go down. Most kit manufacturers that I've ever worked with, and that's internationally as well as here, they've refined their product pretty well to get a very good balance of value and economy. One of the things that you're trying to do when you're doing a self-build usually is you're wanting to improve the quality in some way or another. And that often does mean, especially this part of the world, making a brighter, more open space. And he's quite right in that it just depends on what you're doing, if it's going to be a major structural change or not. And so the fundamentals for costs are usually how big is it and what is the quality of things you're going to put in. There's quite a difference in price between an economical window, for example, and a Passive House certified window, but there's a value to both. So yeah, that's what I'd say really. The cost will usually go up a bit from the most economical design, but not that much necessarily. But you're going to live in this building a long time, so the value is definitely worth doing. And I must say Scotframe, I think, are about the best firm out there for being approachable to say, I've got a bespoke design, can you put a kit together for me that would work? And they're great, they do. So a great thing, I think, if I was looking at the most economical ones for doing a self-build, an off-the-shelf is usually cheapest. A slight change to an off-the-shelf is second cheapest, and then you're a bit more expensive again for doing a complete bespoke design. But the values in each are all different. The value of the home you'll get tailored to suit yourself is probably far greater than the difference in the actual kit cost.
Yeah, and the key thing you said there is you're going to live in the house for a long time, so there may be opportunities to scrimp and save, but actually might have a compromise a lot more in terms of value and enjoyment.
Well, I used to say to people when they said, "Oh, I don't want to spend any more money," and it's not any money. It's like, "Oh, can you get a return on investment quite quickly?" And I said, "Well, how much do you spend on your last holiday, and how much time do you spend in your home?" And the dynamic of that's really changed because clearly people aren't going on holiday as much. But apart from anything else, they are now spending a lot more time in their home. So that value of having a quality interior environment and a bit of landscaping has gone up, I think. Not the cost, but the value of it has.
Absolutely. Yep, that's certainly with lockdown as well. I mean, we're obviously kind of spending probably 95% of time in our houses at the moment. It's important. Hopefully that answers that question. Let me just kind of scan down here. Okay, so maybe one for you. I've got one for Duncan, but I'm going to scan down. Let's get someone else on. Let's see what we've got here. That's Scotframe again. Okay. How do we go finding out how to get connected to mains, or whether we should be looking at private supply, and what does that entail? So maybe Ben, that probably sits quite nicely in your camp.
Yeah, I will say quickly, for some reason, just in case I drop, I'll rejoin. For some reason, everybody's going super slow, and I think it's already kicked me out a couple of times since we've been started. So apologies if it interrupts me. So in terms of whether you go with mains or private supply, I mean, quite often the plot of land, if you're building a new home, or the existing property, if you're renovating, that may well already be dictated. It might physically be that the main supply is too far away. And while in a lot of situations, it might be possible to connect, but it's just not going to be financially feasible. The cost involved, we've been in situations where people have been quoted, upwards of £20,000-30,000 in some extreme situations where they've got to get the house connected up to the mains. Even then, even if you can get mains water, it might still not be the best supply available. Case in point, we've had a customer recently who was building a lovely new house on top of a hill, and they were all ready to go for mains, but obviously Scottish Water are only required to provide 1 bar of water pressure at the point at which the spur line comes off the mains supply up to your house. So they might, we worked out they would have had 1 bar of pressure at the bottom of the hill, but by the time, they were like 450 meters, at a very steep angle up this hill, they would have had no water pressure. So in that instance, they had the option of mains, but they are going to go down the route of a private supply simply because they can have it located near the house and there's much better pumping options available. Private supplies also, there might be other factors involved that dictate which one you go for. So a lot of properties, particularly in Scotland, that are already on private water supplies may well be using an existing well or spring. It's very, very common. In some cases, it'll be a plot where there's nothing. There's no well, no spring, not even a burn. And then really it's sort of up to the customer. So we will, help them develop any particular private water source. If, depending on their budget, it might be more preferable for someone to initially say, just sink the concrete rings, maybe about 10, 12 meters, and just have a surface water well. That is certainly one of the cheaper upfront initial costs. But what we tend to find is that as time goes on, because any water that's flowing through the surface soil, it's going to be subject to seasonal changes. As an example, obviously, if you're near agricultural land, certainly in the springtime and summer, you get a lot of fertilizer, a lot of nitrates being dumped into the ground, and anything that can get through the ground will leach into your well water supply. So it's an option to have a well, but you might find that over the course of its lifetime, while it was cheaper up front, you're constantly, year in and year out, you're paying for a higher level of servicing and maintenance because the system is coping with changes in spikes in water quality. And also, you do have this issue that we kind of touched on in my introduction, where we're finding there's not recently groundwater retention is struggling lately. It's flowing away. It's not, it's not being stored in the surface soil. So one of the other options, which initially admittedly is a higher upfront cost, is having a borehole. So in terms of how do you get connected and where do you go, you could literally just pick a spot and we'll drill there. So we're very, very fortunate in Scotland that we live in a part of the world where there's a lot of water in the bedrock, and so there are different ways you might decide where to drill, but we can literally drill anywhere as long as it's not within 5 meters of a structure. And that's mostly just we need a certain space around the drill rig for safety. And it's out with 50 meters of like foul water soakaway of a property. So that's something that, if a customer is building, we like to liaise at the very beginning with the architects. And something that has already been mentioned once with regards to when you start looking at things, that, for instance, with Neil and stuff, is like, you can't do it too early. And as we've touched on before, we quite often get people coming to us, the house is 80% done, the soakaways, the wastewater treatment, everything's in place. And then people finally come to us and say, oh, right, by the way, we need water. And if you leave it till too late, it can cause so many problems because, we've been to sites where the architect's already designed where the foul water soakaway needs to be. And because of maybe where the well is that people are wanting to make use of, you can't use it because SEPA will not allow you to utilize a private supply if it's too close to the foul water soakaway. So kind of basically recapping, if you want mains water, contact Scottish Water. If you want private supply, contact ourselves. And if you've got an existing supply, and we can do so many different solutions to make use of it, tanks, booster pumps, treatment systems, or we can drill a borehole and provide hopefully find you a much more viable, consistent supply, that can be drilled literally almost anywhere on site, provided we can physically get the drill rig on it.
If I could maybe jump in a bit too, I'm sort of reading the question, how do we go about finding out how to get connected to mains? On a virgin, this probably applies to a virgin site, I'm guessing, since they don't already know if there's not water already there. At the early stages of a site like that, you can do a utilities search for a fee of about between £100 and £200. You can find out where all your local utilities or nearest utilities are, and you'll get a map that shows drainage, water, power, telephone, etc. And that's money well spent early on in the project. And if there is a reasonably adjacent water supply, Scottish Water who you apply to, and it's a pretty straightforward process, although they're not very quick to respond and they take their time. So allow 3 months for them to just get back and give you an answer. so that just adding that in there.
Is that something that's anybody can do? Is that like a website or something that people can check, or do they have to?
There's a number of providers that the names escape me at the moment. But there's a number of proper providers there that can do utility search for you, and they'll charge a fee, and then they'll provide you with a map or a plan, if you like, that has the different services you've asked for shown on it.
Money well spent again, isn't it? Again, there's a theme occurring in terms of doing upfront investigations. Okay, how much should it cost to get? Right, thank you for that. Let's just have a look. What else we got here? I'm going to try and find one for Bodum. Here we go. Okay, question for Home Energy Scotland. We heard that there is an interest-free loan that we can apply for towards our heating in a new build. How can we find out if this applies to us? Is that something that you can help with, Bodum, or?
Yes, for sure. I mean, as long as they own the plot, and that's obviously if they're doing the self-build or new build. And obviously, depending on which technologies they're looking to install, we can also help with regards to which technologies might be suitable for their property, whether it be solar PV, ground source heat pump, air source heat pump. With self-builds, because they're so well insulated, there is much more options in what you can do in terms of installations rather than a retrofit. Because you've already got a good base on that. But with regards to the loan and what's available, there is the interest-free loan through Home Energy Scotland. And with regards to different technologies, if you're looking at perhaps solar PV panels, you would be eligible for a £5,000 interest-free loan. Looking at solar water heating, again, you're looking at a £5,000 interest-free loan. And one of the new things which we have are about to introduce just before quite shortly is an enhanced cashback. Certain heat technologies are also getting an enhanced cashback. Things like a ground source heat pump, for example, at the moment, you can currently get a £10,000 interest-free loan towards the cost of installation, but with the new enhanced cashback coming out soon, you will be able to claim £7,500 towards that. So that leaves a remainder of £2,500 of a loan to pay off when you've had a £10,000 interest-free loan. So that's quite a good thing.
The cashback element of that, how does that work?
So the cashback, basically, once the system has been commissioned and installed, and you've had offer of the loan, once you've had offer of the loan, you then go and get the system commissioned and installed. And once it's been installed, you then send the invoice to Home Energy Scotland Services Delivery Team, who deal with all the loans. They will then basically release the funds into your bank account, which will then allow you to put the money towards paying the installer. And then there's a direct debit set up for you to pay back the loan. But that's at that point, the £7,500, if you went for a ground source or an air source heat pump, would be wiped off that. So that's the enhanced cashback, and then you would only be left with the £2,500 to pay back. But obviously, with a ground source heat pump, that can vary in price, anything up £20,000, £30,000. So, but at the end of the day, having an interest-free loan and having an enhanced cashback may influence your decision to go with a more greener technology than old fossil fuel, oil or gas.
So it sounds like there's quite a lot involved in that. So probably worth getting in touch with yourself just to kind of. I'm going to flash your details up, and I will do it for everybody, but. Just so that they can get direct Is it yourself that would deal with them, or is there someone else at Home Energy Scotland?
Well, this is it's Scotland-wide, Home Energy Scotland. So there's there's a whole network. So it's although I'm based in Blairgowrie, Perth and Kinross, we cover all council areas. If they phone from their area, the 0808 number behind me, I don't know if you can see that. But if you phone that number, they will get to the nearest advice centre that will then direct them through to the appropriate person. Automatically, they will get through to the telephone team, and subsequently, if they require further in-depth, more advice, and with myself being an in-home specialist, that then gets directed in a queue towards myself to deal with. So, yeah, that's the way it works.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Tech, smart tech. I wonder who can give that one to. We've got one about internet going down. Let's see what this is all about. What happens if our internet goes down? Does that mean that we wouldn't be able to access the smart technology, or are there backups? Question mark. I'm not sure what it means by backups, but so I guess the question's regarding. I'm not up to speed on smart. You obviously know exactly what you can and can't do with smart technology, but I'm assuming that this is. Can you control your heating and things like that? Is there anything that would be critical and would require your internet? And if that went, I know that my garage door, if the power goes off, I kind of get the garage door to go down or up. That's as far as my smart technology goes in this house. But is that something you can address?
It just depends on what type of smart tech you're putting in and what you're talking about. Most of these systems, like the heating systems and that, will have an element of local control. So they'll work within the home without the internet being there. But if you obviously want to operate it from outside the house through an app on your phone, you won't be able to do that if your internet's gone down at home. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it depends on what technology you're putting in, and because there's certain things that you can get local control on more than others, if that makes sense. But I mean,
it sounds like,
you can also get routers that have a SIM card in them, maybe for a backup. So if your hardline internet is going down, it can switch over to the 4G signal or that type of thing. But they obviously cost a bit more money again, and they're not that popular. But yeah.
But I guess in terms of the internet pretty much sounds like it's only if you're going to try and control anything from within your home, which doesn't sound like it's critical. I guess if you're in the home, there's probably some sort of override that you can control locally for whatever it is you're going to do.
Obviously, things like smart speakers and that type of thing, they're not going to work if the internet's gone down because they're relying on the cloud interface. It's a pretty dumb box without the internet. But as I say, for heating control and that type of thing, obviously it needs a local element to it, because if the internet goes down, you can't have your heating running without being able to switch it off or switch it on or anything. So.
And just while you're on the call, something that you said before, which I found quite interesting, is about trying to, again, the whole design aspect of self-builds is trying to understand exactly how you're going to operate your home. So if it is going to be a smart enabled home, that if you know that up front, you get the design to really cover that. So for example, if you were talking to likes of Duncan, for example, if the house purchaser or house builder was going to be enabling their home to be smart, being involved with Duncan at a very early stage about hardwiring the cabling or whatever it is that's required is key, because obviously things like power sockets, TV aerials. Now we're talking about network cables in the home.
Yeah, and getting in early is really important as well for the design of the wiring system, because there's recommended separation between electrical cables and network cables, and even electrical and your coax for your TV signal and things, because of interference. So you really want to look at it early to try and find the best routes and design, because there might end up that in certain areas you can't separate your cables. So then you have to look at shielding or some other type of method to protect them from the interference.
So just a question there for operating smart appliances or smart lighting. Are those things that can be the control mechanism or a box, something like that, is within the house, or do those require to only be fed through the internet?
The majority of them will be in the house, so locally controlled, and the box will be in the house. Most of the time, the internet element of it comes into being able to control it from out with the home. So say you're leaving work to come home and it's cold, you could turn your heating up before you get home, or something like that. Or if you're at the airport on your way home from holiday, you can turn the heating back on before you get there. But yeah, the majority of it is there's that local element for the main part. Let's say it's just things like smart speakers and things that really need the cloud for them to actually operate at all, or streaming services to watch TV and movies. If that was your only system you had in place and you didn't have a TV aerial or a Sky Dish, then without the internet you wouldn't have any TV to watch. But
do they still use things like NAS boxes or something like that to download and store your own movies and music locally?
I think people still use them sometimes, but it's sort of less common now with the amount of streaming available.
I'm told.
I mean, if I actually, sorry. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say I'm lost already. I thought I was down with the kids, but I'm clearly nowhere near the kids here.
I thought you were a kid compared to me.
No, I'm aging every week at the moment, like we are.
I mean, odd as it sounds, actually, with dealing with water jumping in, actually, there's an element of relevance that we can have that. So obviously, dealing with like smart technology in a smart home. Nowadays, a lot of the pump systems we can install, be it the borehole pump or like domestic booster pumps, they're now at the stage where they do have like an element of Wi-Fi in there, so that you can, on your phone, you can control your water pump and your borehole pump from your phone if need be. Obviously, if that goes down, one of the advantages we have of still making sure you've got, especially in the likes of a booster pump, which is the pump that's actively getting the water pressurized from, say, the tank or the intermediate storage throughout your house, it's something that if you are doing a self-build, you might not think, well, if my internet goes down, bugger, I can't control my pump. Initially, even if the internet goes down, the pump will stay on whatever it's currently programmed to do. But if you do need to control it, even if the pump's in an inaccessible place, obviously, if it's a borehole, it's borehole pump, it's down the borehole. If it's a booster pump, it might be in a loft or somewhere that's not easy to get to. A lot of these systems now, as well as having Wi-Fi, we offer them, they come with like a Bluetooth as well. So as long as you've got power, if the internet goes down, you might not have the distance, you might not be able to be at the far end of the property or away from maybe, say, your plant room, but you can still then go and remotely with your phone or your tablet or your computer, depending if it's like a laptop, you can go up to them and you can Bluetooth connect and then still control your pump settings, change them if need to. So kind of maybe a bit of a more rare occurrence, but I think obviously it's a lot of people outside of actual electrical appliances in terms of leisure would consider that in a self-build water supply might also be stymied if your internet goes down. So we do have kind of that backup there as well with Bluetooth.
I've got a question, actually. I don't know if we can do that. I find I've got quite a few clients in remote rural places, sometimes not that remote, where the internet signal through the providers is unbelievably poor. And I've had one client who was he actually went to a cellular system with a mast, picking that up as being his best solution. Do any of you guys come across any of that?
I actually, for several months just used a router with a 4G SIM card in it because our internet was so bad. It's improved now, but yeah, it's quite common, and certainly up around the Highlands. There's a lot of properties that, as you say, get terrible internet or almost no internet connection.
Orange remote. I'm being serious. I'm in remote. I'm just opposite the mains of Drum Garden Centre, and I cannot get internet to save your life. I'm on a 4G router at the moment, so
Yeah.
it's crazy. So it doesn't even have to be out in the sticks. It could be where you would recognise as being relatively central.
Yeah, and I think 4G, especially at the minute, is fantastic. People keep talking about how great it will be when 5G comes, but you have to understand that the infrastructure required to go in for the 5G to become available to everybody is, to my mind, still a long way away. But a 4G router is better internet speed than the majority of us get through a hard line. So it can be slightly more expensive, but again, there's a lot of good deals just now with some of them on data-only SIM cards. So it's definitely a viable option.
What was that?
It's definitely a viable option if you have no other choice to get a data SIM card and a router.
I think, yeah, irrespective of where we're at right now, I guess if you're, as you were saying earlier on, Duncan, if you're in the place where you're designing your own home, you'd like to think that problem will go away at some point. And I'm not going to say near future, but certainly in the future. And there is solutions out there, like again the 4G routers, 5G routers, whatever they are.
Well, what I think right now, though, too, is that although so many of us have been forced to work from home, it's established now, it's forced the use of the Teams or the Zooms, and the realization for a lot of companies, actually, you don't have to come into the office. And a key consideration for that to work, and for an awful lot of people to say, I'm going to relocate to the Highlands, is can I get a good internet connection? And in a lot of places, you just don't through the traditional hardwired way. So I just thrown that out there to see if there's much experience of that, because I think the cellular or mobile signal route is actually one that opens up a lot more potential places for people to relocate to and work from.
Absolutely. No, it's a valid point. I mean, it's almost up there with designing a home office in your new build. If you're going to be, again, in this new world, which we've been forced down the route of trialing that working from home, I think it's a positive thing, because it perhaps lends a bit more of a life-work balance into the working day. If people are building a new home, you'd like to think that there's an opportunity here to have a separate office in your home. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are on that, if people are seeing that as being a valid kind of consideration when they're going through the design process.
Well, we're actually developing a prototype for a proper home office that should be affordable to then put in your garden and quick.
There you go. Details from DWR Architecture. Yeah.
Well, there's a difficulty. I mean, most people have been forced to working from their home, and those that are doing it will probably be well aware of all the noises, even if they don't have young kids. That isolation or separation between work and home life is really quite hard. A garden office is a really effective way to achieve that. To feel that I've gone to work, I've closed the door, when I'm there, I'm not disturbed. And I know I started off that way myself when I started the practice in 2007.
I think one thing you
certainly something I'm considering.
Oh, you're not alone.
You can get it,
especially having two young children as well.
Get your network cabling or that type of thing, some sort of network signal out there. So not just to rely on the Wi-Fi signal out to your garden office. That's almost guaranteed to lead to disaster in the middle of a Zoom call.
Hardwiring's the best. I actually relied on a TP link, which worked. Happens glazing over.
No, not at all. No, I'm actually in a place where I've got BT. I don't know why I'm paying for it, because it doesn't work really, and I've just got a shared card thing that you put in your phone with the router, and it works fine. The internet works. That's all I need to know, really. So as long as it works, if it doesn't work, then I start screaming the house down. But we're going to crack on. We're at 8:05. We've got quite a few questions. I'm going to try and go back to the start again. So I'm hoping I'm trying to cover people equally. So I've got a question here about realistic current cost per square meter for a timber kit house with a basic finish. Self-managed project. Is that something that we could fire to you, Malcolm?
Yeah. How long's a piece of string?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something like that.
Some regards, and I suppose it depends on where you are as well, and what part of the country you're actually building. When we attended the pre-lockdown, when we used to attend these self-build shows like the ones we've done with yourself, Gavin, it's a common question: how much is it overall going to cost? I suppose pre-lockdown we would have said, or even back in the last year, depending on where you were building, what level of builder you were using, etc., and without taking into account any odd utility issues, you could be anywhere between £1,200 to £1,500 a square metre. We're seeing that increased. I think you're probably now maybe 1,400, and I think that would still leave scope if you were managing the trade yourself to drive that down a bit further. But depending on what you put into the design, basic finish is fine from an internal perspective, but it may have lots of glass. It might be a vaulted ceiling. It might have high sound performance or thermal spec, but for a middle of the range, no special utilities in the ground, decent ground conditions, that would be the other one, then anywhere between, let's say, a middle range between £1,300 and £1,600 a square metre. So
that's cheap. That is cheap. Yeah.
So like I said, it depends where you are.
Yeah, we get asked that, or I get asked that all the time. It's like, I was thinking of doing a building. How much will it cost? Name your price. I put out a primer, a self-built primer, where I gave an indicative size for different numbers of bedrooms of properties, and then a cost range. And my lowest price I put in when I'm telling people is allow for at least £1,500 a square metre, up to 3,000, because if you're doing a passive house with really high quality finishes, you'll easily get there on a small build. That number tends to come down the larger the building. Do you find that as well?
Yes. Yeah.
So smaller buildings they may be cheaper as the overall line, but the cost per square meter actually goes up. But that's my ready reckoner, is look at the size of the buildings, how many bedrooms you're wanting, and just a notional start at £1,500 a square metre for budgeting. It's better to budget and have something in your pocket than to start at £1,200 a square metre and find you've run out of money.
I mean, is there a kind of, again, I was having a punch at the old Google experts earlier on, but here's me. So is there a kind of website that you could go onto that you could punch in various kind of elements of your build? So say, for example, you're going to be in the Highlands, you're going to have a 3-bedroom home, layman terms kind of questions about ground conditions, etc. Is there something like that out there that you could, someone could get used to what sort of number they should be budgeting for? Or is there too many varieties or too many things that could impact the cost per square meter?
There's not ones you can get on the internet I'm aware of. The British Institute of Chartered Surveyors do have cost indexes for costs of different types of builds in different parts of Britain, but you have to pay. You pay for that. If you want to know that, go to a quantity surveyor.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. And I'm a quantity surveyor, so I'm probably the wrong person to speak about that. But yeah, no, it's interesting because you've got two different experiences there. You've got you could throw a number out there, but there's all sorts of things behind that. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to, people can hear a number and then they run with it. Unless you're actually sitting talking and people are getting to understand exactly what the project's all about, you could be going down the wrong path completely.
They'll usually hear the lowest number and at some point get a bit upset when it isn't the lowest number.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great, thank you for that. Hopefully that helps. Okay, let me just scroll back up to top again. Let's see what we've got here. Neil, we've got a question about the loan fund. Yeah, this was a question, I think, from the same person that was asking about the Home Energy Scotland fund. So there's a loan arrangement that we could tap into through the Community Housing Trust. I think we addressed that earlier on, didn't we? I can't remember if that was offline or if that was when we were on air. Did we talk about this on air? The Community Housing Trust loan.
Yeah, I
think this person's just I think they've just heard about the loan arrangement and they want to find out a bit more information. I think probably what I'm best to do is put them in touch with you and take that discussion offline. But I think ultimately the principles of the loan, the Scottish Self-Build loan fund, maybe a quick summary of what that is and how long it's valid for.
Yeah, so the Self-Build Loan Funds, the Scottish Government initiative, it does act as lender of last resort. So this is for those that have applied to via a broker like Hamish or direct to the self-build lenders. And if they've been declined, it's nothing bad against that client. It may be that they just don't fit the criteria of what is a limited panel of lenders. The essential part of the criteria then is that because ours is a bridging fund, we also need to know how they'll repay that loan at the end, because it is a bridge for normally around about 12 months. As we said, applications closed on the 31st of August 2021, with loans all being repaid by August 2022. Up to a maximum of £175,000 for the build. Build cost can be higher than that, but that's the maximum that we can lend. And the other essential part is that the plot of land would have to be owned outright. That was something that was touched on earlier by one of the questions that said they had enough to build the house, but not to buy the plot. So if the client can use their funds to buy a plot, we can actually release the first tranche of funds against the value of that plot because it is an asset they own. Because ultimately, the Scottish Government must lend by way for first ranking security, hence the reason the plot must come unencumbered. But more than happy to take that call or an email contact offline. I'm seeing my number and web details and such like right across the bottom of the screen there. So yeah, by all means, make contact and we can have a direct chat with that one.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just scanning through just now. How do we find it? Means what's the cost? Sorry, Hamish, you're not. Sorry, Malcolm, you're not getting off the hook tonight. We've just got another one here, which is talking about how does the cost of an off-site build compare to an on-site build?
So parts of it would be, pre-lockdown and pre-availability of materials and very high increases in materials. Certain elements of the build will be more cost effective. It's possibly the hidden parts that don't get picked up in this comparing the line on a piece of paper, the bottom line, as it were. So the risk of doing it on site is a quality issue. From I'm taking this as a stick build solution. We've then got so connecting it all together and the quality of the right timber has been used and the build quality is correct, and then the follow-on trades, the insulation, the risk of probably taking on a lot of the sizing of materials and the quantities of materials is a risk that you wouldn't have to do if you bought the packaged deal, because that's all done by the supplier in most cases. And then the warranty of it, the warranty of the frame and the structure, which comes from the suppliers. So whilst on a piece of paper, the bottom line, it might look more cost effective, I think there's a number of risks there, and I think it could have an impact on what we're seeing in the maybe this is something that Hamish could help on as well, that certainly within the structural timber frame industry, showing competency, showing warranty, showing quality is something that's asked for now for mortgages as well. So I think it decreases maybe the lenders available. I might be wrong, but I think it might if you're not a registered manufacturer.
Hamish, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think to an extent, I guess it's just going back to really scoping out at the very start, what's your project going to look like? What professionals do you want to use? How are you going to bring that project to life? And by no means assuming that every single self-build lender will have the same view on life. I was going to pitch in there where we talked about cost per square metre before, a case that myself and Neil looked at back in the summertime, where it'd been a group of trades guys all going to do a job, work on each other's projects, and they actually presented quite a low, well, it was a low cost per square metre to lender, who declined it on that basis. It was almost too good to be true, too cheap to be true. Lenders just have their own different perspectives on it, and I don't think you can take anything for granted, is the message on that piece.
I would just echo the sentiment about the quality aspect of off-site building. It comes down to an economy of scale. From an architectural point of view, when something's manufactured off-site, and if I take windows for example, I'll always specify a factory finished window, because under factory conditions, the consistency of the component, for example, is just generally higher because it's done in a much cleaner, highly mechanized environment. On some things, on small projects, sometimes stick build is the only way to do it, just from a practical sense. It's a fiddly old historic building and no walls are plumbed in or anything like that. But generally speaking, in my experience, if it can be factory assembled and made, then you've just got better tolerances and better qualities of coverage of the finishes and so on in it.
Okay, thank you very much. You talked about finance there. We've got another one here about cash reserves. What advice would you give to someone without significant cash reserves who wants to build a house? How does it affect who will lend and how much can be borrowed? Hamish, what do you think about that?
Well, that's a scary one for this time on a Sunday night, gents, I would say. Yeah, I think everybody around the table here would probably agree that most self-builds run over budget. You know, that's a statement of fact. So I guess if we're coming into the table with a minimum amount of deposit, it means there's no room for error at all. It is a scary prospect being stood in the field with the wellies on, looking at a half-built house, trying to get hold of a lender on the other end of a phone, knowing we have no money to go whatsoever. So yeah, I think you have to go in accepting the risks on that type of project. If you were to go on internet, you will see lenders there who will do up to 95% of land and build costs. It's not a lender I've really used before, so I couldn't really tell you how reliable they are once you come to the tight figures. It is what it is. Can it be done? Yes, it can be done, but I think everybody just has to sign up. There's no room for error on that kind of project at all. So it could be into some scary times with that. But
yeah, I must admit that it's an exciting thing to do, but ultimately you want to have as least stress as possible, I guess. And cash is king when you're running 100 miles an hour trying to get the project done. Because I can imagine there's so many different things that pop up that you didn't expect, or there's maybe the nice to haves that you really want to be investing your money in whilst you're in construction mode or even before construction mode.
Yeah, I always recommend to all my clients on jobs that allow for a contingency sum, depending on the type of it. If it's a new build, make sure you've got access to some cash of between 5 and 10%, because there will be unforeseens. Quite often the unforeseen is the client themselves wanting something bigger or better than they actually can afford. And they forget sometimes that the small little additions, and they add up.
Absolutely. Okay, great. I'm just still going down these. The problem we have, we get comments coming in on YouTube and Facebook, so I'm just trying to weed through the ones I've already asked. Just a couple of things more about finance and budgeting, but I think we've answered them through other questions. Awesome. Looking at that, we had a wee comment in there about a microwave Wi-Fi system, which works great if you have a direct line of sight to the mast. Yep. All right. Right. Talk amongst yourselves here. That's the cost to get. We talked about the mains electric. I'm just looking at the time actually. It's 8:20. So what I'm thinking I'm doing is maybe kind of wrapping up. I mean, we've talked about various kind of topics here, and I think some of the questions are of a generic nature. And I think what we need to do is put people in touch with people after this show. Ultimately, there's a theme kind of has gone through this program and quite a number of the previous ones as well, which is about engaging with the experts as early as possible. And I'd be interested to find out who people think is the first person that people should speak to if they're planning a new self-build or a renovation project. Who is the right person to speak to at the very start? I mean, I'm looking at everybody here, and everybody's got different networks, everybody's got different places, but I think ultimately anybody is probably the right answer. If you don't talk to anybody and you try and just relying on Google, but is the architect the right person to start with? And if so,
I think so, but I'm biased.
Was it timber provider and they put you in touch with the architect, or is it the finance people? Because ultimately the finance people probably say, well, actually, how much money have you got? You know, until you actually know how much money you've got to play with, do you actually speak to the architect, or do you do that together? It's an interesting one.
I would say a good architect, but do your research. It's easy to go to just Jim along the road that does some plans, but take a look and see, are they well suited to self-build? Or because it's from there, it's the first idea, the first question, like I want to do it. It's come up a few times saying, how long is a piece of string? The architect's the first one that can move you towards that. Saying, even without a design, I think the Scotframe's pretty good too. They'll have standard sizes of kits that say if you want a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom house, then that's roughly the size it'll be, and from there you can start to budget.
I would agree with Duncan there. We have a large range of houses and a large range of specifications, so you can really find out. It might not fit exactly the house that you're looking for, but there'll be elements of it within houses. So there's a broad range to give you an idea. And once you've got an idea, and then you've got to start looking for plots, because I think Duncan will know that people will come and go, I want a house designed, and they don't have a plot. So it could be wasted money because they're not able to take that house design to the plot that they then ultimately think of buying. So I think they're very closely linked. I think finance and architecture.
From first principles of designs, we'll design to the plot, which means what's the access, what's south facing, where are the views, and then what size of house do you need, what is your lifestyle, and the Scotframe can fit all those boxes generally, but a prototype building doesn't care which way the ground slopes, or where the drive access is, or where the views are. So it's probably better to say, look at the plot you're looking at first, and look at what the design elements are telling you. And then by all means, you're actually much better equipped then to go to the likes of Scotframe, because you'll already know which way you want the views to be out, which way you want it to point, and where you want your entrance to be. And you can start looking at the house types that fit that, rather than taking a standard house type and say, I'll make that fit a site, even though it doesn't.
And then once you've got all the component parts, like for example, what budget the timber kit's going to be in the general build, is that when you would then go to the finance, or would the likes of Hamish and Neil probably argue and say, well, go to them first, and then they would kind of suggest, right, this is kind of financially where you're positioned in terms of being able to affordability, I suppose it's called, and then that would essentially drive, or maybe as a midpoint, you talk to everybody at the same time and just kind of understand all those different dynamics, and then be able to have more of an informed decision for the, for what you're dealing with. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
It's a continuous process, actually. There's the first point of what's your outline budget, and that's early on from speaking to like a Malcolm or myself that you'll get a rough idea. But throughout the then process after that, you revisit and check the designs fitting within your budget.
I think you're absolutely right, Duncan. I think it's to use like the whole panel that's here tonight. We all play a part in delivering ultimately. So there's supposed to be no right and wrong answer to the initial question. Everyone's got a part to play.
There's so many different things as well. I mean, even the water supply. I mean, that could be quite a significant kind of decision process in terms of treatment as well.
I mean, I was debating if I was going to chime in there, because obviously, certainly, I do think realistically the first step is the likes of Duncan and Malcolm. You've got to actually, you don't just pick a plot and then say, right, what house am I going to build here? You have your ideal house in mind, and you need the likes of Malcolm and Duncan and to help get that design. But anecdotally, I know how serious water can be. We've actually had more than one occasion customers who've come to us and planning permission hinges on there being a viable water supply, and some mortgage companies will actually have conditions that, they might not help fund the project if there can't be a consistent confirmed water supply. Because obviously, either, if you are trying to make use of a lackluster supply, or you maybe have someone's drilled a borehole and it's not been done well, or you just haven't got the yield you want, then, year in and year out, the cost of maintaining and upkeeping that supply can be, not unfeasible, but it can be extreme. And obviously planners will not want to let you go ahead with a project that's going to be practically untenable. So I've seen, going back to what we were talking about earlier on, the earlier you come to us, even if, you come to us at first to help assess a water supply, and then you come back to us for the work being done much, much later in the day when the build is actually progressing or is about to start. But yeah, I've been talking to lots of customers who've, been left in dire straits because, they thought they were going to get water sorted, and it's completely, by not having it done first, it's completely stymied moving forward with the whole project. And even in one case, unfortunately, I know a customer had to completely scrap the whole project and go look elsewhere and go back to square one looking for a brand new plot somewhere else.
It's quite scary. But one last question that's kind of pipped us into the back against another finance one. So how is the finances released if you purchase the land to start foundations, etc., in advance or arrears? Is that something that's reasonably standard, or is there different dynamics to that as well? Oh, Hamish has gone offline again.
Hamish is going to get jump in then. So self-build fund, I touched on earlier. The plot has to go outright to come and we can release the.
Sorry, Neil, there's a bit of kind of echo. Is everyone else hearing that? Or is that just
okay. I'm hearing it too.
Yeah.
I think it's echoing.
Yeah. Okay. Listen. I think are we still getting echo? Or is it? Yeah. I think time's to go. Listen. I'm going to try and copy that echo. Thank you very much for everybody that's joined. I'm going to try something. I'm just going to myself and go back in.
And he's gone. And the echoes.
The children have been left unsupervised.
The echoes stopped. So actually, I'll jump in. And could you pick up where you were then about the release of funds?
Yes, just an answer to that question. Just an answer to that question.
Oh no.
Yep, the echo's back. The echo's back.
No, that goes back. So guys, let's stop it here. Thank you very much, guys. We're on, and I'm going to cut it dead. Thank you very much, guys. Catch up again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having us.